Hello there, people of the internet. We do have some wind out here today. I apologize for that. But I'm out here doing some testing because I don't think I've ever tested this particular set of circumstances. So there's a big argument. I'm a little winded, guys. You'll have to forgive me. I just carried a bunch of stuff out here to make this video. But there's always been an argument of 9mm versus 45 ACP. And don't get me wrong, I definitely see pros and cons with each argument that is being made on these various different calibers. However, I figured I'd come out here and I would test them myself. I have seen like videos on YouTube and whatnot where they're like ballistic gel tested, and I mean there's a lot of things, a lot of variants that go on between 45 ACP and 9mm, and I figured just for good measure we're going to go ahead and throw a 40 Smith & Wesson in there as well, because that's a good middle ground between the two. But I want to see just how much of a middle ground that actually is. So I specifically chose 3 handguns that are of equivalent barrel length, not of equivalent size, well, I guess kind of equivalent size, but not of equivalent weight. And as a result, recoil and accuracy and whatnot is going to be different between all of them. So I'm not going to, be focusing on the accuracy between 9 and 45 just because it's going to vary based off of the handgun. And I'm not going to focus on the recoil felt, because if you have yourself like say a high point in 9mm with that heavy slide moving back and forth, odds are that's going to recoil as much as a 45 ACP 1911, just for an example. Actually, I half remember doing something similar to that a long time ago with, I think it was a JS 9mm, like the predecessor to High Point way back in the day. But let me show you guys what I have here. For our 9mm, this is a double stack Ruger P89. I mean, it will serve our purposes. I'm not going to go into history and development of this thing. Essentially, the Ruger P series was being used as competition. That's the word I'm looking for. Being used as competition in military trials to replace the 1911 way back in the day. And obviously it lost, and the Beretta 92S became the M9, but I mean, I've covered the history on this thing in the actual video about it. If you want to go check that out, go ahead and go check that out. But this right here will serve our purpose. I'm only rocking full metal jackets here, like standard ball full metal jackets. And the reason I'm doing that is because there's so many differences of ammunition out there. There's some 9mm loading that, ballistically speaking, the amount of energy it puts down range is actually equivalent to 45 ball ACP. But I want to go ahead and keep everything just like as bare minimum basic on the spectrum as possible. So everything's going to be ball ammunition. This is 115 grain projectiles fired out of this 9mm. I thought about going with 124 grain, but 115 grain is definitely the more popular grain size. And 45 ACP, I have me a T-Sauce, Tices, however it is you want to pronounce that. I'm pretty sure it's T-Sauce. 1911 A1, 45 ACP. These are 230 grain ball projectiles. This will serve our purpose as well. Barrel length, roughly the same. Firearm size, roughly the same. These right here are very comparable firearms. For the 40 Smith & Wesson, I have one of those budget Smith & Wesson SW40VE handguns. This right here is basically a Glock clone, chambered in 40 Smith & Wesson, obviously. Also, for full metal jacket, this is a polymer frame handgun, and having shot this alongside those, this recoils significantly more than either of those because it's much lighter weight because of that polymer frame. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to do 9 and 45 like side by side, and then I'll do the 40 Smith & Wesson to see how in between that is. But I want to do 9 and 45 side by side to get a real good comparison between those two, because those are going to be the focus of this video. This right here is basically just going to be a little addition. So for the first part of this video, I have some water jugs here. Let's hit it with all of these cartridges and see just how explosive these are. Now, I do want to point out, I know 45 ACP is going to be more powerful, but I want to know just how much more powerful it's going to be. And I think we're going to figure that out with what we're seeing here. I did see one time a public demonstration of somebody who shot a ballistic gel torso with 9mm and 45 ACP. The 9mm, they were both ball rounds, went through the ballistic gel torso, and the gel torso jiggled, but I mean, we've all seen what happens whenever you shoot ballistic gel. There's just a pin line through it, and whenever you hit it with the 45 ACP, it actually knocked it off of the stand that that he was shooting on. So I want to see I want to do some experimentation with this and see just how much more powerful 45 ACP is to 9mm. Now, although 45 is more powerful, I will say I'd rather have 17 rounds of 9mm than 8 rounds of 45 ACP. Okay, so I'm not going to put these far away, maybe a little bit further than that, because I'm expecting some splash. But I'm not going to put them far away because I want to be sure that I hit them, because I don't have a whole lot of ammunition to work with. Now, personally, I think that 10mm is the best millimeter. And I don't have one because I'm poor. If you want to help me fix that, then links to Utreon and Patreon are in the description below. That would definitely help me make some content. So first off, we're going to do 9mm out of the Ruger P89. All right, well, that just kind of poked a hole in it. Yeah, that poked a hole in it. Now, this right here does have a decocking system in it, much like the Beretta 92. Just like that, now the gun is on safe. So that basically just poked a hole in it, and I mean, the thing barely moved. I see that we blew the top off of this thing, and that's about it. I guess the energy transfer really did blow the top off. But yeah, there's our exit hole right there. Another exit hole from whenever I shot that second time. Oh, never mind. That would be our entry hole. Our exit hole is actually on the bottom right there. Okay, so that's what was going on there. But yeah, just kind of poked a hole in it. Not very impressive. I was honestly expecting a little bit more of a boom with the 9mm, but that did not happen. Of course, we are just using full metal jacket rounds, 115 grain. Now let's try the 230 grain 45 ACP onto this 1911 here. All right. Well, that time I got a little wet, but I mean, the thing also continued to stay there. Let's have a look at that exit wound before I go judging that. All right, the exit wound is slightly larger than the 9mm, and that's to be expected. Both of them blew the lid off. So actually, this right here has damage from whenever you hit a target, the energy transfer goes into the water, and that kind of spreads the water out. This actually has damage on sides where the projectile did not hit, and it just kind of tore the plastic due to that energy transfer. 45 ACP just has more energy than 9mm because it has more mass. Might be traveling slower, but we're talking about twice the bullet size. Actually, I think we're talking exactly, no, yes, exactly twice the bullet size with what we're doing. Now let's go ahead and go with 40 Smith & Wesson. All right, 40 Smith & Wesson out of this Smith & Wesson budget Glock. Well, there goes those things. That actually had quite a bit more force behind it than 45 and 9mm. Yeah, whenever this hit, like, it hit and splashed me, like, rigorously. That's, I was not expecting that result. But there we go. This did more to this water jug. And I think I know why. If I had to make a bet with these 9mm and 45 ACP rounds, they are a round nose. This right here has kind of a flat nose to it, so that might have caused more energy transfer. All right, up next, what we're going to do while we enjoy the wind blowing us around, I'm going to set up a cinder block here. I'm not shooting the cinder block. I use that for demonstration purposes and holding up my stuff. I have this bowling pin here. I say we shoot the bowling pin with each of these cartridges and see how far back it flies. I'm going to shoot it at close range. I am not expecting these rounds to go through. I hit one of these bowling pins with a 44 Magnum one time on one of my videos, and it didn't even go through. So I'm just gonna hit this with 9mm, 45 ACP, and 40 Smith & Wesson, and we're gonna see how far back it goes and how much energy is transferred onto that. Unlike with the water, since the projectiles will not be traveling through this, all of the energy from those projectiles will be transferred into the bowling pin, and this would be a really good demonstration of the power difference between these things. So pop this off safe, go ahead and cock my hammer here. I'm gonna go ahead and get down low and nice and close to this thing, not like point blank range close, but probably about a yard away. And we hit this thing with each of these cartridges. Here we go. All right, well, I hit it and it fell down. Let's go ahead and, well, I was gonna come look at it, but it's just a hole without an exit wound. So we went back probably about 1.5 feet. All right, up next, 45 ACP from the 1911. Actually about equivalent to what we saw with the 9mm. It's probably more like 2 feet back, but that's not much of a difference. All right, very interesting. I was expecting 45 to like blow 9mm out of the water, but so far, they're about neck and neck. Now let's try 40 Smith & Wesson. It impressed me before. Let's try it again. All right, 40 Smith & Wesson out of our budget Glock. Oh God. Well, the bowling pin rolled. I will give it that, but it did make it farther on 40 Smith & Wesson than with the others. But it did roll. It landed where it landed about the same as the 9mm and the 45 ACP. All right, so our next test, I actually have this piece of wood right here. I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with each of these, and let's see if we can penetrate through this wood. Unlike the bowling pin, this right here is just raw wood. We actually have a pretty good chance of penetrating through this stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this up and put a couple of rounds through it. I guess I'm just gonna set that right there. All right, first off, 9mm, same story as last time. I guess we'll see how far this gets thrown back as well, because why not? All right, let me see what that looks like. All right, so I set this up specifically so I knew where the 9mm would come out if it would. We have no exit wound from the 9mm. Definitely an entrance wound right there. Oh, hold on. It might just be covered with cobwebs. We do have an exit wound with the 9mm. Right there's our exit wound. It's about the same diameter as the 9mm, so not much changed with that. So we do have an exit wound with 9mm. Let me set this back up, and we will go with 45 ACP. I'm gonna hit lower, so our 9mm wound channel is not affected, or is not affecting the 45 ACP. Let me go ahead and grab my 1911 here, and do exactly that. This time I'm gonna aim in the center. All right, let's check that out. All right, 45 ACP, I hit right there. We have no exit wound. Oh, never mind, I found it. I keep assuming no exit wound. There's our exit wound with the 45 ACP. It's about 5 times larger than the 9mm. So yeah, that is, here, hold on, let me set this down. 9mm exit wound right there. 45 ACP exit wound right there. That is a substantial difference. All right, now I'm gonna set this back up and hit it with the 40 Smith & Wesson, and let's see what happens. All right, I'm gonna set this up and shoot slightly under where I hit it with the 45. Byron. All right, well, I really did hit it right under. Right here's our 45 entrance, right here's our 40 Smith & Wesson entrance. Survey says, well, we also went through, but if you look up here, it looks like the 40 Smith & Wesson went upward through the wood. And I mean, I don't know why. You guys see where we hit down here, and the exit wound is actually pretty damn close to our 45 ACP exit wound. So, I mean, it still made it through. And honestly, the exit wound for the 40 Smith & Wesson looks very similar to the 45 ACP. However, I'm not done with exit wounds yet. I have this piece of wood right here, and obviously all the rounds are gonna go through this, but I wanna see what kind of exit wound each of these rounds make. Now, I don't have a way to stand this up out here. I don't think that I can just lean it right here. That might work. Okay, I think I'm gonna just do that. I'm gonna hit it with 9mm, 45 ACP, and 40 Smith & Wesson, and we're gonna look at the exit wound from each of these. Remember, these are just full metal jackets, so I'm not expecting a whole lot, but I still wanna go ahead and see what this looks like. Hopefully the wind doesn't blow this over. I'm gonna go ahead and hit it before before that happens. All right, well, that went through and through. All right, as to be expected. I'm gonna grab 45 ACP here. How many rounds do I have left? I got 2 rounds of this left. All right, 45 ACP is in. Oh, I jammed my 1911. 1911s never jam. My goodness. Actually, this is the first time I've had this 1911 jamming. I've stuck probably about 5,000 rounds to it at this point. I haven't been keeping count on that, but between 4,000 and 5,000 rounds, quite a bit. All right, now for the 40 Smith & Wesson. All right, let's go ahead and look at the differences and what we're dealing with here. We have, oh God. All right, we have 9mm, 45 ACP, and 40 Smith & Wesson. Well, shiver me timbers, this is exactly what people were saying was gonna happen. 9mm did poke a little hole in it. 45 ACP blew probably about a thumb-sized chunk out of this piece of wood. And 40 Smith & Wesson is about in the middle of that. Very interesting. actually very surprising. I was not expecting the results to be this deviated, but we are literally seeing the differences between these cartridges. And I know I was not expecting the results to be this dramatic. Let me go ahead and say that. But I was definitely expecting some differences, but that's quite the difference. Now, if I were to rock like 124 grain 9mm ammunition, maybe we would have seen some different results, but I doubt it. 230 grain full metal jackets in 45 ACP. That's just too much for our little 9mm to be able to contend with if we're talking for shot per shot. Now, like I said, I'd rather have more shots of 9mm than less shots of 45 ACP. But at the same time, my God, I underestimated the difference. I really did. And 40 Smith & Wesson it impressed me. I was told that 40 Smith & Wesson would be very similar to 9mm performance, and we did not see that. 40 Smith & Wesson kept up with 45 ACP. I mean, it was obviously a little bit less because it's, less of a projectile going downrange, but yeah, it is definitely an in-between cartridge, and we see with our testing here, it actually did really, really well with the water transfer, but like I said, I think that's just because of the bullet type that we were using. But then the energy transfer onto the bowling pin, 40 Smith & Wesson, although the bowling pin did roll, this is a non-scientific test, 40 Smith & Wesson did get it farther than the others, just saying. Not only that, but 40 Smith & Wesson, I mean, just look at the holes that are on this piece of wood right here. Yeah, all right, what I'm gonna do, because I actually have another round of 45 ACP and another round of 40 Smith & Wesson, I'm gonna flip this over and hit this with those two rounds again and see if we get the same results more than once, or if that right there was just a fluke, because 40 Smith & Wesson, it appears to be absolutely smack dab in the middle between 9mm and 45 ACP, and that's pretty much what it is, but we are seeing actual proof of exactly that. So first off, 45 ACP out of my malfunctioning 1911 here. I got hit in the face with some debris off of that. All right, up next, 40 Smith & Wesson. Man, the trigger on this thing sucks. All right, survey says, I have not looked at it myself. Place your bets. I think we're gonna see the same thing. All right, yeah, that's about the same thing. Thumb size hole from the 45 ACP, I think about half that for the 40 Smith & Wesson. Yeah, that is literally the same thing that we saw down there, just up there. So the results have repeated themselves, so I think that is a solid conclusion. Well, folks, this was a fun time. I had fun with it. I was not expecting the results that I found. I was expecting 9mm to do better than it did. And I was expecting 45 ACP to not do as good as it did. And I was expecting 40 Smith & Wesson to basically be equivalency to 9mm, maybe a little bit better, but it really legitimately, literally is smack dab in the center of these two cartridges. Now, like I said, 10mm is the best millimeter. You're basically lobbing lead downrange with the power of a .357 Magnum out of that stuff, ballistically speaking, energy transferring speaking. But I don't have one of those, and I cannot afford one of those. I hear High Point's making a 10mm, but that's High Point. So, I mean, I might look into that. Thanks for watching, folks. I hope you guys had fun today. I know I sure did. If you like this stuff, subscribe to the channel. Description down below, link to all sorts of stuff. Go ahead and go check that out. That being said, you guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. I still have some sunlight left. I might make myself a few more videos before the sun fully goes down, because I'm having a good time here on the range. I'll see y'all later. while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garrett. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.